Okay, so I've spent a little bit of time looking at this, and I know I said in the last episode that I wanted to put the control switch somewhere in this area. What I'm realising now is there isn't actually that much room. I want to keep a little bit of distance between the volume and tone control, and that really doesn't leave me anywhere to put the switch. So I'm going to revert to plan A, which is to put the switch up here in the up about. I've done a check and I can get the switch through this F-hole really easily, so there's no problem getting it into position. So I think that's just the best compromise for this setup. Well, that was all a bit of a one-way trip, but they've come out all right. Look really nice. They'll do with a little bit of cleaning up, but happy with those. So the next thing is to get this in the vise and look at the output jack location. So the output jack, I've marked where I want it, just kind of measured to the centre of the width of the guitar. Just putting one of these sockets in. Basically these have a little lip on them, so I want to make sure that that lip is flush with the edge of the guitar, and then we need to drill out for the body. The outer lip is 25mm and the inner one's about 22-ish. So I'm going to start off with the 25. Once we've got that down as far as we need it, we can then drill all the way through with the 22. Okay, so that's the control holes done, the hole for the output jack, and only really leaves me one thing to do at this stage, and that is to mark out and drill the holes for the neck bolts. So all I've done is I've got the neck plate, put a bit of masking tape on, mark the centre line, and I'm going to join that up. I'm going to match that up with my centre line on the body, and then use an awl just to mark where I want the holes to be. Okay, and now I've just cut a little block of wood to fit into the neck pocket, and I'm just going to clamp that in place. And that will stop the timber blowing out when we drill through. Okay, so that's all the holes drilled in the body. That's the last of the little jobs that we have to do done. So we're moving on to the finishing process now. Now the first step in the finishing process is of course to do a whole load of sanding. I'm not going to subject you to that. So I've already pre-sanded this body. I'd already done the edge when we were prepping for the binding, and I've just done the back off camera. I've gone through the grits on it. I've started quite rough to make sure that I've got it nice and flat. So I started with an 80 grit pad on the DA sander, got it nice and flat with that, and then I've worked my way through the grits up to 320, and that's plenty smooth enough for what we want now. With that done, it's time for grain filler, but before we do that I need to mask off both the binding and this top, because as you'll see I don't want to be getting the grain filler onto either of those. So that's all masked up now. I don't imagine for a second that I'm not going to get any of the grain filler onto the bits that I don't want it on, but the smaller the amount that I do get on there the better. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, so time for the grain filler, and as regulars to this channel might have suspected, it's not going to be particularly complicated. What I'm going to use is plasterboard joint filler, or what our American friends might call drywall mud, and basically it's just a powdered filler that you would seal the joints on a plasterboard job with, and all I'm going to do is mix that up with a little bit of water into a paste, and then I'm going to add some of this, which is a water-based concentrated wood dye by Liberon, and just spread that into the grain of the wood, let it dry and sand it off. So the first step is just to mix some of this up. I'm not going to need a huge amount, but I'll mix more than I need. It's very cheap way of doing it. I bought this tub probably about 5 years ago. It cost me about £3 and I'm not even halfway through it yet. We'll start with a tiny bit of water. You can always add more water. It's very difficult to take it out. It's a tiny little bit looser. Now that's mixed up to a really nice smooth consistency. I'm going to put some gloves on first, because this stuff really does stain skin as well as wood. And I'm going to add about 2 and a bit sticks worth. This stuff is very concentrated, so you hardly need any at all. And with that well mixed up now, I'm going to do little areas at a time, but I'm going to just drop some on. I'm just using a strong paper towel, and I'm just going to work that into the wood. Once you've rubbed it in a little bit, then pull it across the grain of the wood. And what I'm aiming for here, doesn't have to be too consistent, doesn't have to look great at this stage, but I'm aiming just to get as thin a coat on there as possible. What we want to do is cut down on the amount of sanding that we're going to have to do. just start working it around the edge. Okay, so that's all covered now, and as you can see it's already starting to dry off a little bit, but I'm going to leave this for 24 hours now, and then I'll get back to it, and we can start sanding it off and seeing what we've got. Okay, so I've left this overnight and it's good and dry now, so I can start the sanding process. Now the sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed that when we drilled for the output jack, it was quite a ragged hole. The drill bit that I used was really blunt and it tore a little bit out. So I've just been back at that and I've just redone it, and all I've done is I've basically drilled in about another 2 or 3 mil so that the jack plate is now recessed in slightly, and I've just put a little radius around there. It's not ideal, it's not what I wanted. For me, that's one of the things about building guitars is, you know, sometimes you have very fixed ideas of what you want, and you know, if you want to go for that, that's fine, but you might end up throwing a few things away. In this case, there's a compromise to be had, which I think will look fine. I'm not sure many people will notice. I will always know it's there, but it probably serves as a good reminder to check how sharp your drill bits are before you start cutting into your guitar bodies. Anyhow, the next stage on this is to sand all this grain filler off, and that is going to take ages. So I'm going to set to that now, but that will be for the next episode. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of this one now, but before I go I just want to kind of explain a situation that's going to crop up in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously the body's getting very close to finish now, and when that finish goes on, it's probably going to be about a 3 or 4 week drying time before we can do any kind of sanding and polishing on it. Now I can fill some of that time in by completing the neck and getting that ready to go, but that's probably not going to be anywhere near enough work to kind of fill up the time that I've got available to me. So I'm going to be doing a few kind of little infill videos while that process is happening. So I might do a build video and I might kind of fill in with something else in between. I don't want to start another build series until I've got this one finished, so for me that seems like a reasonable way to go forward. But I think it actually leaves me with an opportunity, and that is to see if there's anything that you would like to see. So if there's anything I've done that you might want a bit of a better explanation of, or there's tools you see me use often that you might want a bit more information on, etc. So let me know what you'd like to see in the comments, and I'll look forward to seeing that. So with that, I'll sign off. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.